Greetings! Hey, I'm Jake, and I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or PF2, as I call it. I love PF2, and I want to share with you exactly what I love or dislike within this system. You'll see videos on ancestry classes, tips, and one-of-a-kind builds on this channel, because nobody sane would make these builds. Today we're talking about the 5 most beginner-friendly classes in PF2. Beginning with Clerics. I know, surprising. They get a lot of bonus spell slots at first level that are only able to be used for healing, so the base functions of a cleric are pretty easy to understand. And if you play a cleric and you choose your deity, you have an inbuilt role-playing anchor. If you don't know anything about what kind of personality to roleplay, you can just act on the tenets and guidelines of your deity. My deity says I hate fire, so I hate fire. It's just easy to figure out. There is one small caveat to the ease at which this class plays. They are a full spellcasting class, and that is one of the most complex things in any ttrpg. However, the cleric has spells that are pretty straightforward in their application and uses, so they just aren't that difficult to select. Plus, clerics have less stress on them to pick their spells, because they already have so many extra healing spells that they're given, and they may just end up doing mostly healing in any given fight. So not hard to figure out, it makes you feel good to be so supportive, and it gives you a role-playing crutch to lean on. Second place is Rogues. Rogues are going to be useful all of the time because the huge array of skills you get. Mostly your helpfulness or support to the party is going to come from outside of combat because of your skill selections. If you're looking for the easiest of all the rogue subclasses, I would go with the Ruffian or the Thief, because they have a really clear identity and are pretty straightforward to play. Overall, no matter which rogue you choose, you get the most uniquely roguey in-combat abilities as a part of your base class, so you don't have to worry about having to pick them. Sneak attack and debilitating strike. I mentioned that rogues are helpful, but because most of that happens outside of combat, you should choose either cleric or bard if you just want to feel like you're helping your party more in combat than out of combat. Next, number 3, Rangers. Rangers are generally pretty straightforward to build, but can be stupid easy if you want them to be. If you want, you can just choose from their subclasses the Precision subtype, which adds damage to one specific creature in combat that you designate as your prey. Then after they're dead, you use Hunt Prey on another creature, kill that one, then repeat till everybody dies. It's a very comfortable and satisfying rhythm to get into. You feel very productive. You just kill a thing and move on to kill another thing. So it's easy to figure out what you want to do, and you can just be more complex later. It gives you time to think about it. One note about the Ranger. If you want the Animal Companion feat, you might want assistance picking one that's going to be useful in the adventure that the GM has planned, because there are a lot of them. Hey, if you're enjoying this or learning something, think about subscribing or sharing this with someone you think will enjoy it. I'm a real little channel right now, and if you'd help me reach as many people as possible, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Fourth place on the list is a tie between Fighter and Champion. If you've played 5e D&D, you'll know the Champion by the name Paladin, which the Champion basically is, even though PF2 uses the actual name Paladin for one of the subclasses of Champion. It's the most paladin-y paladin that the Paladin could paladin. A Champion is basically a fighter with less combat flexibility, but you get a little healing and utility. You also only have a few choices of feat because they're for certain causes. You just put on the heaviest armor you can afford, a shield, a melee weapon, and you provide reactive and passive bonuses to your allies. I guess I'd say that the main difference in how they feel is that playing a Champion just feels like you're being supportive, while the fighter has to decide to give themselves options to try to be supportive during the build process besides killing things. I guess that's sort of helpful. For Champions, helping people and feeling that satisfaction is just a perk. It just goes along with the Champions. The Fighter is ultimate battle freedom. You can use any weapon, ranged or melee, any armor, so you can switch weapons to pretty much anything in combat and you will feel just as useful because you're just as good with that weapon as you are with the weapon you dropped. You can choose to make an archer fighter, a dual wielding fighter, a sword and board fighter, or anything in between. They're easy to play, easy to build, and do massive damage because they crit more often than the other classes at low levels. I mean, well, okay, at any level. Our fifth and final ranking position is Bard. I know, I was surprised too. 5e, Bard is not that easy to make. Bard is pretty easy in Pf2 if you have help picking your 2 first level spells, and if you choose Enigma or Maestro as your subclass. Enigma is basically lore, and Maestro is like focusing on bardic music. Because the Polymath subclass is a bit more complicated, they just dip into a lot of different skills, and the Warrior Bard is bad at fighting. Just don't pick it, like, ever. If you want to fight, pick a fighter. If you don't play a Bard Warrior. So the Bard is another class that feels good to play because you are helpful to the other players. You'll probably inspire courage, move, then maybe cast a spell. It's pretty simple design. The only reason I say you want help choosing the first 2 spells is that during play, you spontaneously cast so you can choose whichever spell is going to be more applicable to the situation on the fly. And you only get to have 2 spells in your known spells or your repertoire to begin with. So have somebody help you with those 2, easy to go forward. So those are all the easiest. So let's go on to those that have a little more complication. But you can still play if you're able to quickly learn 1 or 2 things. Monks. Easy to play, not terribly easy to build, because it's a build your own class. There are a lot of stances and key powers to choose from, so if you have someone helping you get past that creation point, then yes, easy to play, because you just hit stuff. Swashbuckler. They're a little more complicated than fighters because in order to get the fighting bonus from your style, that's the name of their subclass, you have to do something else in combat. A fighter is just more straightforward. Their fighting feels like, the Swashbuckler's fighting feels like a middle ground between rogue and fighter because you get bonuses in certain situations and otherwise you just hit stuff. The next 2, I really wanted to find a place for on this list because I think that if you play them, you get a lot more reward for a little more added difficulty in making or playing them. So these are, I guess, the advanced beginner classes. Summoner. You have to balance your spells with your Eidolon's attacks. You also have to understand how the Act Together ability works. It's essentially, you take that action and you and your Eidolon both get 2 actions that turn. You can read up on it if you want to, though. If you can learn how Act Together works, how to pick your spells, and stick to just enhancing your Eidolon in combat with your actions and allowing the Eidolon to do most of, if not all, the damage for you, it can feel pretty cool. Like a pet trainer class with just about whatever magical flavor you want, because you can choose from a lot of different types of Eidolons. And it's a really rewarding class, especially for roleplay. You have this supernatural link with an extraplanar entity. It could be a devil that you made a contract with, or a dead relative come back to protect you, or your previous character's undead horse. Options. Now the last class, Sorcerer. Sorcerer is easy once you set them up, because they're spontaneous casters. You can just pick the spell that you use for the given situation. You could use some help picking your beginning spells though, your repertoire. I apparently like that word, repertoire. The most difficult decision to make is what spell list you'd like to pull from, because you can pick any of them, any of the 4 spell lists. So if you have a good idea about what kind of feel you want to have or the kind of spells you'd like to be using, then you can make this class pretty easily. The only reason that this didn't rank higher is that it doesn't have a real reliable standby ability that's your go-to in combat, like the Bard or the Cleric or the Summoner or the Ranger. Okay, I guess like a lot of classes, it doesn't do that. And Sorcerer doesn't by default help your allies in any consistent way like the Bard or the Cleric. If you'd like help figuring out how to build any of these, let me know in the comments. I can create a walkthrough of the class, the building process for that class, or a more complex build with that class as the main component for more advanced players. Okay, that's all I have for you for today. Let me know if you liked the video with a thumbs up or didn't like it with a thumbs down, to help me figure out what kind of videos to make next and into the future, the kind of stuff y'all like. Thank you for joining me. And remember, your belly button is just your old mouth. Take that one to bed with you.